DOGE has been working incredibly hard across the board.
The deficit's $2 trillion, right? $1 trillion is interest. $1 trillion of it is expenditures. We're at $160 billion, that's 16% and counting.
It's not just about identifying problems, it's about how do we fix this going forward.
The whole system was flooded and broken. $600 million of fraud at SBA from Social Security numbers to people that were like invalid debt or just fake.
The moment you pointed this out and you said this is wrong, it was, oh, you're just xenophobic.
I think people want this. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. Everyone knows we can't spend more money than we take in forever. And everyone sees the problem. Everyone sees the problem. And I'm hoping Congress sees it too.
There's a lot of people too that have probably been complaining about this and frustrated about it from within the government for years.
And America deserves better. They're good people in the government. You know, all the stuff we're finding, it's because people pointed to it. I think the most important accomplishment is we actually did it.
And if you would like to keep up with everything going on in the first 100 days of the Trump administration plus DOGE, you should go to our friends over at Ground News. For instance, I'm looking at a headline right now that says, "From DOGE cuts to tariff, see Trump's first 100 days by the numbers." Now, on the left, they're really emphasizing that only 5 bills have been signed into law during his first 100 days. On the right, they're noting that President Trump is trying to return to an age of meritocracy and challenging the disparate impact theory in civil rights laws. I can dive further into this story and many more because Ground News provides me with multiple articles that have been published on this topic with links directly to the individual articles. Remember, Ground News is a website and app that gathers related articles in one place so that you can compare headlines, helping you to understand not just what's happening, but who's telling the story and why. So if, like us, you are completely and totally over the way that typical search engines curate the news where you only get one perspective, go over to ground.news/Doge and check out all of the different features they provide. In fact, if you go over there right now to ground.news/Doge, you can get 40% off their Vantage plan, bringing the price down to just $5 a month for unlimited access. This will give you access to all the features you need to keep track of everything that is going on, both with DOGE and beyond. Let's get back to the interview. So I'm excited about this one. For those of you who have been watching our DOGE episodes, you also know that we had a pretty big episode a while back where we were asking the question on whether or not DOGE had uncovered treason. And a lot of that had to do with a chart that was uncovered, some stats that were uncovered by our guest today, Antonio Gracias. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Great. Happy to be here.
So if you could real quick, give us a little bit of background on the work that you have done and are currently doing with DOGE.
Sure. So I started out at Social Security Administration and basically just mapping the entire process, trying to find fraud, waste, and abuse. That led us to the enumeration process, which is how you get a number.
Yeah.
And in that data, we found this 5.5 million people, which we created the chart for, we published publicly, that were enumerated beyond entry. These are people that came in, they were illegal at the border, and then they were made legal through the abuse of a series of programs. And these programs were, I call it, they were programs related to asylum. So there's, when I went to the border, talked to the guys there about what happened, then the busiest days, they would give people notices to appear or recognizance to kind of release them in the interior, and then they could apply for asylum.
Yeah.
So the thing that really struck us about these numbers is, of the 5.5 million we found, 1.2 million were marked in our system as unknown. So we didn't know what their actual status was. That's why we went to Brownsville and to Laredo to understand from people on the ground what had happened. And what they told us was really shocking. It was that they had days where the surge was so bad that they just literally gave people these sort of ticket kind of things to let them in the country. And then once you're in the country, you can apply for a work authorization, wait 180 days, and you get a Social Security card in the mail. And the thing I think people need to focus on here is just the human tragedy that's unleashed. So if there are 5.5 million people on our list, and there are 1 million people that were enumerated, got replacement numbers at the border, then the 7.5 million people that ICE knows about that are in here, that's kind of roughly 15 million people. How many people died coming up? Right? How many people died on the way up? And then what happens once they're inside with the criminals and terrorists we found? I mean, you can look at the White House lawn and see, the rapists and the murderers. This is a human tragedy all around. And the people at the border, right? They had record suicide rates at the border. So CPB and Border Protection, during the surge, 80 plus of these people committed suicide.
Yeah.
It's just impossible to deal with.
Well, it was amazing because I've done some work within Intel, and I've done some work on designing Intel training for Customs and Border Patrol, and it was fascinating to watch, fascinating and horrifying to watch what was happening with respect to how the cartels were managing the process, how the coyotes were working, and how people had this image in their head, especially when you saw things like DACA and whatnot, where if you're looking at it, you don't understand how the process works, you think, oh, we're just being compassionate. We're creating a situation where when vulnerable people are brought over, well, of course, we're not putting them back into a dangerous situation. And then you looked at the way that criminal enterprises, terrorist enterprises, manipulated these organizations and these laws, and it was just infuriating. And I think one of the things that I noticed, and I think our audience was really frustrated about, is like you come from, your parents were immigrants to this country.
Yes.
And so it was this idea that the moment you pointed this out and you said, this is wrong, it was, oh, you're just xenophobic. Oh, you're just evil. Oh, you just don't care. And it was not only verifiably false, but the thing that really infuriated people was when the press said they were here legally, and then you found out what it meant to be here legally.
Yeah.
And it was, just as you mentioned, cross the border illegally, throw up your hands, claim asylum, and now, here's your pardon, and we're going to take you through the process now. Now, you've since, you guys, obviously DOGE is still working on trying to find greater efficiencies within Social Security, and that's going to be a long process because it's not just about identifying problems, it's about how do we fix this going forward. But now you've moved on to Department of Homeland Security.
Yes.
Okay, what are you doing specifically there?
So when we found these numbers, we mapped them all the way down to the border to figure out what's going on, and then started mapping the entire immigration system.
Yeah.
Both, I'll call it the system we're talking about here, which is the system of making illegal people legal, all the asylum cases, and then also the positive immigration system to see out what's going on. Because what's happened is there are 4 million people sitting in front of the immigration courts. There's only 700 immigration judges.
Oh my gosh.
The backlog is like 6+ years.
Yeah.
And then there's another 1.5 million people sitting at USCIS. This is the organization that actually gives you green cards, H-1Bs, or naturalizes you. So that backlog is huge. The whole system was flooded and broken.
Yeah.
Which means the negative here is that there are lots of people that shouldn't be here that are here, but actually the people that we want here can't get through.
Yeah.
Right. So there's tons of horror stories of people that actually deserve to have H-1Bs. Super talented engineers. I have someone in my firm who's an American citizen. His wife's a doctor. She's waiting to get processed to get her green card and her citizenship. Right.
Yeah.
She has a baby here in the U.S. They can't get through the system.
Yeah.
So the system I think the real tragedy is just it's all the way around, right? The compassion that we should have is for everyone. Mm-hmm. It's the people that got hurt coming across. It's the people that are here that we now have to deport. It's for the people that can't get through the system that should get through the system that we want to be Americans.
Well, it's the Biden administration. The bottom line is the Biden administration prioritized people crossing the border illegally rather than people trying to come to the United States the right way. And there's nothing compassionate about that process, especially when you set something up where children are now being used in order to smuggle people across the border or being sent into human trafficking, whether it be labor or otherwise. So let me ask you this. What do you see? Because for the we're right here at the first 100 days of the Trump administration. DOGE has been working incredibly hard across the board. What do you see as some of the if you had to name 2 or 3 top accomplishments of DOGE in the first 100 days, what would you isolate?
Look, I think the most important accomplishment is we actually did it.
Yeah.
Right. So you step back, think about what the president has done here, what Elon has done here, right? Yeah. They said, we're going to try to actually cut costs for the first time ever in fraud, waste, abuse in the government. This all the way back, all the way to Clinton when the last time someone ever tried to do this, right? Yeah. And the first time it's ever done this at this magnitude. What the president did was sign an EO that allowed us to go across systems to find fraud, waste, and abuse. What the criminals are doing is fitting between the systems.
Yeah.
Right. So we found an example, $600 million of fraud at SBA from Social Security numbers to people that were like invalid, dead, or just fake. That's a lot of money. Yeah. Right. So the fact that it can be done, the fact that you get someone like Elon that is a multi-generational business leader, right? Once 100-year business leader who's willing to do it, and a president has the actual moral fortitude to do it, and it can be done. So we've cut $160 billion of costs so far, and it's still going up. But more importantly, man, we've proven that it can be done. They're good people in the government. All the stuff we're finding, it's because people pointed to it. Yeah. They want to do the right thing.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the bad actors within all of this. And look, there's plenty, and we need to discuss that. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of people, too, that have probably been complaining about this and frustrated about it from within the government for years. And they finally now have a mechanism where they can actually report instead of just filing an IG complaint that, potentially goes nowhere.
Yeah, we get I mean, I personally have gotten several whistleblower calls. And
Yeah.
we look at this, we look at that. These are good people that are now being enabled. And,
Yeah.
and I think the most important thing is can be done.
Yeah.
We're trying to change the culture internally. The secretaries are doing a great job, many of them, of trying to help and do this in their departments. I had a meeting yesterday with a department that doesn't have a DOGE team that came and said, hey, will you guys just show us how to do it
Yeah.
so we can do it ourselves? That cultural change, that mind shift, I think
Yeah.
is the most important thing. And secondly, we have cut a lot of costs, a lot of
Sure.
fraud, waste, and abuse, and we are making a difference. There's the deficit's $2 trillion, right? $1 trillion is
Yeah.
interest. $1 trillion of it is expenditures. We're at $160 billion. That's 16% and counting, right? So I think like across the board, from the cultural change, enabling people that haven't been listened to feel like they have a voice now to make a change, and then actually cutting the expenditures. I think we've made wins across the board here.
No, so I agree. The other thing too, and look, all of us who believe in what DOGE is doing we're always going to be frustrated because we always want to see more. But one of the things I know I've pointed out is like, look, if you thought we were going to cut everything through fraud, waste, and abuse, you're deluding yourself. There's a lot of legal expenditures out there that are not things the federal government should be doing. But DOGE is and this is credit I will give to DOGE. DOGE prioritized the exact things they should have been prioritizing up front: fraud, waste, abuse, and then I think you also did it in a very transparent way so that people could check the receipts.
Yes.
And to the extent that their mistakes were made, it's like, fine, great, then we'll go back and we'll correct them. Obviously, the first phase of what I'm kind of calling the first phase of DOGE is identifying where's the waste, where are the inefficiencies within the system, and how do we correct for that. So some of that is about creating greater efficiencies going forward. So if there is like a phase two, if you will, of DOGE, is it finding the problems and now implementing the suggestions on how to make this better? Because obviously we don't want to just find waste and then next year find the same waste.
Right.
Like, what do you see as the primary role in identifying workable solutions going forward?
So I think this we have to go from being sort of fraud, waste, and abuse to more programmatic over time with the secretaries inside all the agencies. And one of the key changes we made is every CIO now has to be technical. And then, believe it or not, the government had CIOs, chief information officers, that were not technical. Okay,
what are they doing?
I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
Collecting a paycheck.
But the point is that when you have control of the data, you have control of the computer systems, you have good technical people that want to make a change. Now you can start implementing change more systematically. And what this is my opinion. What should happen, what will happen, is that you'll see this go from I'd say pure fraud, waste, and abuse to more programmatic long-term improvements. So how do we make those? How do we make that stick once DOGE is over, right? That's the idea, is to change the culture, the mindset, and the people, right? The actual skills in the government. Because if you're an information officer, you don't know how to use a computer.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah. So it's the culture change, the systems change, the personnel change, and the technological changes that need to take place, catching up.
I mean, look, we have systems. All the systems I've seen are run in COBOL, which is like a language you learned in like the 70s and 80s, okay? This needs to be upgraded, and it needs to be improved, and America deserves better. We have the best technology in the world in this country. It should be applied to the government industry. Guys like me, we need to react and help the government upgrade.
So let me ask you this. There's another component here, and I think this is a little bit more of a tense issue, but I think it's one that has to be discussed. And speaking of Elon Musk, he's talked before about don't make something more efficient which shouldn't exist. So as we look at this, and this is where I think we're also going to find cost savings. Do you think they're from the identify where the problems are, identify efficiencies where they should take place? What do you think that other component of is identifying things where we essentially say that, look, we're not saying there's not a problem or a challenge that needs to be fixed. We're simply saying that maybe the federal government isn't the proper place to address this challenge. Do you think that politically that's just become an incredibly difficult thing to get up there and say?
Oh, we said it. So it's difficult. It doesn't mean you shouldn't say it. Look. The reality is that I'm in this way. I think a believer in Ronald Reagan. Right. Small government that serves the people. This is the right answer. When the country was founded, I think there were only 4 departments, right? And the reality is, I think getting back to focus on what do the people really need? What should the federal government do? That is the question. That's a question for Congress and for the President of the United States to decide together. And I'd be supportive of figuring out how we can actually shrink the government, to really most effectively serve the people. And
Yeah.
that I think that is something everyone can agree with.
Well, I know we did an episode where we actually read off all of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And we said, okay, when you look at these enumerated powers of the federal government, and then you look at the size and scope of the federal government, you're going to realize it doesn't fit into those enumerated powers. So it's clearly something has to be done. This is another thing, too, I want to point out. I've had a lot of people say, well, I'm glad that DOGE has found it, but what are they going to do about it? And I always have to remind people, DOGE is an advisory group.
Yes.
You guys don't have statutory authority to cut funding in order to reallocate it into the budget or to cut departments. You guys are making those recommendations. Now, what it looks like to me from the outside is that the executive branch has been incredibly supportive and that the secretaries have been incredibly supportive. But Congress absolutely needs to act. So let me ask you this. How do you feel about the coordination that has taken place between DOGE and elements like the DOGE caucus within Congress or the various committees that have been established? How do you think the communication has gone as far as turning what DOGE is identifying into legislation?
Look, I'll be candid with you. I am not involved in that at all.
Okay.
And I am very careful to only comment on things that I know about.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think that we make recommendations between the executive and the secretaries they implement, and we've gotten very good support across the board. I mean, there's the A plus and there's the A, right? So people are trying it at various levels, but I think it's been very supportive, and everyone sees the problem. Everyone sees the problem, and I'm hoping Congress sees it too. I couldn't comment directly on your question.
Okay. Oh, I know another thing, too, that is also starting to take place. We saw this in Texas. We've seen executive orders in Oklahoma and Louisiana, and that's state-level DOGE activities. And right now there's 26 states that have either had some sort of legislative proposal or executive action taken in order to do this. Now, unfortunately, it's not in the states that probably need it the most, but we'll take greater efficiency wherever it is. Do you see any sort of process whereby the work that DOGE is doing on the federal level, the same people could actually provide support and assistance to the state level entities that also want to establish a DOGE and replicate what you've done there?
So I would say, yes, I see the same process.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the same people.
Sure.
I think these states have to have their own people. And believe it or not, I'm from Illinois. I spent 25 years there before I moved to Florida.
Yeah.
And I've had friends of mine who are either in office or might run for office in Illinois ask me this question of, could we do DOGE here?
Yeah.
Okay, which is like the 49th most banker state in the country, right? I don't know where it is in the list these days, but it's at the bottom of the bottom decile of the country. I think people want this.
Yeah.
I think people want this across the spectrum. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. Everyone knows we can't spend more money than we take in forever, right? That leads to bankruptcy, just the way it goes. So I think it's going to happen. I think, as I said in the beginning, the most important thing here is we've proven it can be done.
Yeah.
We've proven it can be done. And there are many good people in this country across aisles that want to do it.
Yeah.
We have to just enable them with the process. I think the people that are here doing it, look, they've got to stay here and keep focused on doing what they're doing. But I'm pretty sure that if we put the call out in these states, other good people will come.
Yeah.
They will volunteer. They will give their time, and they will serve their country and their states.
You guys got to develop the master class for them, though. So it's one thing I know about me. I've been I'm a state legislator in Virginia. I've been there for 10 years, and states like to replicate rather than innovate, if at all possible. They don't like to be the first ones to try it. But like you said, this is something that has been done. It's a proof of concept that's long past due, and you guys have been very successful in many respects. So thank you very much for your time. I know you guys got to get back to work. So
thank you, sir.
Once again, thank you for being on, and thank you everyone for watching. Once again, check out our DOGE Watch, which appears on Wednesdays. Then we have special DOGE Talks, which also appear on Saturdays. And believe me, the next question that I'm going to be asking is going to be of members of Congress, and that is, why aren't they doing more to actually capitalize on the good work that has been done with DOGE and with the executive branch? Once again, thank you for joining us.